I have to verbally speak the phrase Bigolas Dickolas repeatedly. Pray for me. Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to a rambling discussion on viral book marketing and how publishers are going to try to replicate what's going on right now and how they will fail miserably because it simply cannot be replicated. But I'll give them some pointers on how to get close. So, if you've not been paying attention to Twitter, the phrase Bigolas Dickolas and how it attributes to book marketing might be very confusing for you. So let me explain. On May 7th of 2023, the user at Mask of a Bun, whose name at the time of that tweet and of the time of filming this is Bigolas Dickolas Wolfwood, which I believe is a reference to a Trigun anime from the 90s that is being rebooted. And they tweeted, "Read this. Do not look up anything about it. Just read it. It's only like 200 pages. You can download it on Audible. It's only like 4 hours. Do it right now. I'm very extremely serious." And they attached a picture of This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. And this tweet did numbers in the way most authors and publishers can only dream of. Already, people are tweeting about working in bookstores and having people come up to order this book specifically because of the tweet. This book has gone on to resurge in the Amazon bestseller charts, and it is to the shock of everybody. And so, of course, there's been a lot of talk. Why did this happen? How did this happen? And of course, how long is it going to take publishers before they try to replicate it? So let's first look at the account itself, Mask of a Bun. They appear to be in a fan account for an anime from the 90s called Trigun, which is being rebooted, and that seems to be their primary focus, more or less. In fact, I was looking through their timeline to do some minor research for this, and they seem to be actually posting more aggressively since the tweet went viral. They compared it to shooting around the neighborhood to keep rent prices low because they don't want anyone to think they are anything other than a very horny anime fan, which I get it. At the time of the tweet going viral, they had about 14,000 followers. That has since increased since then, but right away, the fact that you have someone that is A, very eager in their fandom from the looks of it, and B, I believe queer friendly if they are not queer, or I don't know much about Trigun, but the fan art that they repost, very queer. So if it's not canon in the actual series, the fandom has made it canon in their heads. So already you had a situation where this person was prime to give this sort of recommendation out because, well, a lot of the people followed them like queer stuff, like speculative fiction. So another queer speculative fiction book that they hear about from a very excited and loving voice, like, yeah, it makes sense that it would get a boost. But it is important to note that this Twitter user wasn't just taking like a rando debut or a little known thing. This Is How You Lose the Time War had already gotten itself its own fan base. This thing has won, as to my count, several awards, the BSFA, the Nebula, and a Hugo. It's been out since 2019, and a lot of people, when they first saw this tweet go viral, were saying things like, "Oh man, love that book, one of my favorites." The author actually, in an interview, was talking about how reading the comments on this tweet was so sweet for her because a lot of it were people that were already fans, and that's really cool. But again, this was not a new book, a debut, a little known. It was already a mid-level book. It was already big for a queer book. It was big for a time travel book, but now it's just become big in a way that most books would dream of becoming. And you can read that article. I will link it down in the description below. Both, there's one with the author and one with Bigolas Dickolas, who is now trying to turn their apparently superpowers in getting things bumped to their anime. And there's actually talk that there might be a reprint of the Trigun manga because of this. That is some incredible levels of viral marketing. But there's more than just that. And one of them we do have to talk about is the name, the person, the book, but also the length. The book, as Bigolas Dickolas was so kind to point out, is only 200 pages, give or take, and the audiobook is like only 4 hours, so it's not a very big ask. If you are coming on to this tweet and this moment and you see everyone talking about it so excitedly, and it's not even going to take you 4 hours to listen to it, like, yeah, you might risk it. You could probably get it from your library. I mean, not right now, probably. I'd be really interested. Low key, I might. Editing Margaret, look up if there's a waiting list for our local library. I want to see a thing. It was available at my library, so I requested a hold on it. Maybe I'll actually read it this time. Okay, so theoretically, it's a short book. You can get through it really easily. People are really, really excited about it. It comes from a funny name. It has a bunch of other people that already love it. Like, naturally, this is gonna explode. And it's just the idea of something exploding like this that has everyone talking about it. And again, I cannot stress enough how much the name being silly has helped this. Because just the fact that Bigolas Dickolas was trending says so much. So of course everyone's been talking about it. There's already questions going around in back rooms talking about how do we get our Bigolas Dickolas moment. And I just like to imagine a bunch of people in like suits having to sit around a boardroom in their publishing houses and say the phrase Bigolas Dickolas with a straight face, and it makes me smile. And like I mentioned before, you can't replicate this faithfully, but let's talk about how they could get as close as possible. First, you'd have to pick a very specific kind of book. A book that has come out within maybe the last 5 years, because again, this is how you lose the time where it came out in 2019. And it would have to be one that already has a standing fan base. Maybe not a very big one, of course, but a mid-level fan base. Already some people are interested. Then you would have to seek out a rather large and nerdy Twitter user who could theoretically stand in as a fan for this work. It would have to make sense for them to already have been a fan of this type of genre of whatever book you pick. Now, here comes the big thing. You'd have to have them write the tweet in such a way that it comes across as genuine. And I don't just mean the everything being lowercase or lack of commas. That kind of stuff is pretty standard online, but there's just something very hard to making something sound authentically excited when it is very clearly meant to be an ad. And of course, this is all completely negating the fact that you couldn't pay the Twitter user for a promoted post, because then it would be illegal if they didn't state it was a promoted post, and if they stated it, then it would kind of lessen the effect. But let's just say you found a way around that. You found a Twitter user that fits all your criteria. They can like low-key at least make it sound somewhat genuine. They fit the right fan base for you, and they tweet about this book. It won't work. Mostly because literally everyone is expecting this to happen. I mean, this tweet has been put on the book in some different language, like publications of it now. There are stickers. There are people talking about it. Everyone is expecting for publishers to try and copy this. Everyone is prepared for the copycats. So I honestly think that anyone that even attempts it, at least for the foreseeable future, is going to be found out so quickly, because everyone is prepared for publishing to try a thing. Therefore, if they actually tried a thing, they're just not going to get away with it. I also wanted to talk about how this kind of giant viral marketing tends to start skewing people's mindsets and making them feel really negatively about themselves. A lot of people saying things like, where's my Bigolas Dickolas moment? I'm never going to get that. And in truth, you're most likely right. You probably won't. But that's just because most people won't. It doesn't happen very often, and that's exactly why we won't really see the publishers getting away with replicating it, because you simply can't replicate virality. The internet decides what the internet decides. But that doesn't mean that word of mouth marketing can't still have a great influence in smaller ways. I am a very small booktube creator. I've only just managed to get my channel to 1,000. I have a TikTok that's only just reached 8,000, and I've been working at all of this for years. But that doesn't mean that I haven't affected things in some way. I know people have bought books based on my recommendations, both on this channel and on Twitter. And maybe on TikTok, it's not as common for me to talk about books on there. But I've still gotten people to buy a book because I spoke about it. And I know that there are people following my reviews, and theoretically, they are following them on places like Goodreads to see whether or not they want to buy a thing. I am still very small. I don't know exactly how many people I have influenced to buy a book. I hardly can calculate any of that. I don't have any of the numbers, but I know it's happened. And that means that anyone else talking about the things they like could likely have the same effect. Word of mouth marketing is very useful because it is one of the most honest kinds of marketing. I've talked about before when authors try to put strict regulations on reviewers, try to state that reviewers should be forced to read and review the books they're given, or put certain limitations on what star ratings they should give or how long it should be. And one of the reasons I gave against that was because once you start putting those regulations on that, you begin to destroy that exact word of mouth marketing. The fact that reviewers are allowed to read and review whatever they want and say whatever they want within reason, obviously, we're not talking about the isms here, and give whatever star rating they want, that's what lends all of those reviews reliability. That it is just someone talking about a thing they read or watched or consumed in whatever form, and they want to tell you about it. And you can't replicate it because, well, a sponsored post just doesn't have the same effect as someone waving around the book in their video, really, really excited to tell you about a cool thing that has dragons and wizards, and the couple was, like, there's never going to be a way to replicate that. You just have to keep sending out the book to reviewers and hope to find that one that helps get it off. And in some cases, you just have to keep publishing. Remember, This Is How You Lose the Time War didn't get this big bump until 4 years after it was published. At the point that it's been published, basically Barnes & Noble would have already put it on the clearance rack. Sellers are sold out because they haven't bothered to carry it, because in traditional publishing, if you don't make it big within the first couple of years, you're out, you're done. This book went viral at a time when the traditional system had already considered it past its prime, and now it's getting this new second life. I've known several indie authors that only took off after trying several different series. Channel mainstay Shami Stovall, who I have reviewed a dozen books from, turned to 3 different series before she found the one that finally took off. I had not even read her earlier works, but the first work I reviewed from her was not the one that took off, was not the one that let her become a full-time author. And she's not the only indie author this has happened to. Several indie authors have published entire books, entire series, before they land on the thing that makes it work. Virality has no rhyme or reason on the internet, or even before the time of the internet. How things pick up in popular culture is random, and not being picked up by popular culture isn't a sign that you're bad or that your work doesn't deserve to be out there. We're kind of living in a grand age, especially on places like TikTok, where things that are years, if not decades, out of the popular mindset suddenly get brought back because of a random trend. Songs from the 90s suddenly becoming a mainstay on the pop charts again because TikTok decided they liked it. Like, there's some great chances for things to get a second life. So just because you haven't had your Bigolas Dickolas moment, or even a smaller moment like that, doesn't mean your work isn't worth it. And yeah, I'm sure that the authors love this moment that they're in. I mean, they've risen through the Amazon bestseller ranks in a way that they probably never could have dreamed of with a book as niche as theirs. But I also don't want people to get into the mindset of, I'm going to replicate this in my work. You should not just be writing a short novella length queer time travel book just to have your Bigolas Dickolas moment. You need to write what you love and find people that love it to build up the fan base from there. Because you might never have a big viral moment. It might never take off. The best you might ever get is a small but dedicated fan group that loves your work and wants to keep reading it. In some cases, it might just be one random reviewer that can't shut up about how you still owe them the next book in this series. And I could name like 5 indie authors here. You all know who you are. Regardless, you can still find someone that thinks about your book the way that Bigolas Dickolas thinks about This Is How You Win the Time War. Thank you so much for watching. Have you read This Is How You Lose the Time War? Are you interested in it now? Can you find it at your library? Are you going to watch Trigun or read the manga reprint when it comes out? Apparently, the Bigolas Dickolas is very invested in getting people to engage with that property. Or have you heard of any other viral marketing moment or publishing houses trying and failing to replicate a viral marketing moment? I have a feeling that when the replications do start coming up for this one, it's going to be particularly tone deaf and awkward, and I am here to watch the chaos. But with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.